Have you ever stopped to think that there might be a secret history, a whole lost world hidden in the words we use every single day? Well, get ready because we're about to dive into one of the greatest linguistic detective stories of all time. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. English, the language we're speaking now, Latin from ancient Rome, and Sanskrit, the classical language of ancient India. I mean, they're separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. What could they possibly have in common? Well, it turns out they share a very, very deep secret. Just take a look at this. It's kind of undeniable, right? The word for brother is brother, frater, frater. Mother is mother, mater, matra. You see it with numbers too, like 7 and 2. The resemblance is it's uncanny. This is way too consistent to be a coincidence. Something bigger is going on here. Now, this isn't a case of one language just borrowing a word from another. We call those loanwords. No, this is something much deeper. Think of it like finding family portraits in homes from England all the way to India and realizing they all have the same distinct eyes. These words weren't borrowed, they were inherited. They are echoes, clues, pointing back to a single parent language spoken long, long before anyone was writing things down. So the big question is, how on earth do you find a language that was never written down? It's not like you can dig it up in an archaeological site. Well, this is where linguists had to become detectives, piecing together the past from the clues left behind in the languages of today. The main tool they use is called the comparative method, and it's actually pretty brilliant. First, you gather up all those related words, the cognates, like mother and mater. Then you start to spot patterns in how the sounds changed over time. For example, you might notice that an ancient P sound always became an F sound in certain languages. And once you have those rules, you can work backwards. You can reverse the changes to figure out what the original parent word must have sounded like. And after all that incredible detective work, this is what we get: Proto-Indo-European, or PIE for short. Now, this is the really crucial part to understand. PIE is a scientific reconstruction. We don't have any books or stone tablets in PIE. It's a hypothesis. But it's a hypothesis built on a mountain of evidence. This is the great-great-great-grandparent of hundreds of languages, from Spanish and English to Russian and Hindi. Okay, but here's where it gets truly mind-blowing. By reconstructing their words, we can actually start to rebuild their entire world. Every single reconstructed word is like a tiny fossil, a little piece of evidence that tells us something about the people who spoke it, what they did, what they cared about, and how they saw the world. For instance, we can reconstruct PIE words for things like to plow, yoke, and different farm animals like the cow. So what does that tell us? It means they weren't just wandering hunter-gatherers. These were people who had settled down, who worked the land, who raised animals. That's a huge deal in human history. And get this, because this connection is just so cool. The PIE word for livestock, peku, is the direct ancestor of our modern English word fee. Why? Well, because for these ancient people, wealth wasn't gold or money, it was cattle. Your property, your assets, it was all walking around in a field. And that ancient idea is still preserved in our financial vocabulary today. Their vocabulary also gives us a peek into their social lives. Of course, we find words for brother and sister, but we also find this term, them's poties, which means master of the house. That little word gives us our modern term despot. So we can infer their society was probably patriarchal. And the fact that their word for woman, gunwen, is the root of our word, queen, shows that a pretty complex social hierarchy was already in place thousands of years ago. This might be my favorite example of all. The PIE root artgistus meant stranger, but it had this amazing two-sided meaning. It carried this idea of reciprocal duties, a shared obligation. And from this one single root, we get both guest and host, but we also get the word hostile. It perfectly captures this idea that a stranger could be a friend you welcome or a threat you fight. It's all right there in the word. We can even see their technology and their beliefs. They had a word for the wheel, queklom, which is where we get cycle. They had equos for horse, and for their chief god, they had Deus, the sky father. Does that sound a little familiar? It should. That's the root that eventually became Zeus for the Greeks and Jupiter, which comes from Deus Spiter for the Romans. So you see, this isn't just some dusty ancient history. Proto-Indo-European is still alive. It is baked into the very way we think and speak every single day, and sometimes in the most surprising ways imaginable. Let's just look at a few quick examples. All right, take the root curd, which means heart. It gives us the obvious words, right? Heart, cordial, core. Makes sense. But it also gives us credit. How? Because the original Proto-Indo-European idea for to believe was literally to put one's heart into something. So when a bank extends you credit, they are, linguistically speaking, putting their belief in you. Here's another one, the root wag, which meant something like to be lively or strong. From that we get wake and watch, to be alert. We get vigor. And you're not going to believe this, we also get vegetable, literally a plant that is lively and growing strong. What about be-ha-ha, to speak? This one's incredible. It's the source of fable and fame, things that are spoken about you. But it's also the root of fate, what has been spoken by the gods, and prophet, someone who speaks for a god. Even the word ban, which originally meant a public declaration, it's crazy how they're all connected. And let's do one more. The simple root ped for foot gives us foot, pedal, pedestrian. Obvious. But how in the world do we get from foot to impeach? Well, it comes to us through a Latin word impedio, which literally meant to get someone's feet tangled up, to block them. So to impeach someone is, in a way, to trip them up on their path. So what we're looking at is a history without history books, a whole civilization without any ruins to visit. It's a story told exclusively through the echoes of words, passed down generation after generation for thousands of years. This quote really just says it all perfectly. The linguists who did this work are like paleontologists for words. They take these tiny fragments, these word fossils that are scattered across dozens of modern languages, and from those little bits and pieces, they rebuild an entire creature, an ancient language and the world of the people who spoke it. Now, it is really important to remember that pi is a scientific model. It's an incredibly powerful and well-supported one, but it's still a model. Scholars are always fine-tuning the details, debating where exactly these people lived, and discovering new connections. This is a living, breathing field of science. And that really just leaves you with one final, incredible thought. If words like fee, credit, and impeach hold these deep, ancient histories, what other secrets are hiding in plain sight in the words we use every single day? What forgotten stories about who we are and where we come from are we all telling without even realizing it?